Thank you so much, Martine. Let's talk a bit about Dutch soaps and their makers. On your intro slide, you had the logo of Gode Tijden, Slechte Tijden, Good Times, Bad Times. We talked about the German licensed version yesterday with the producer Rainer Wemken. How responsive are the writers and producers in the Netherlands, according to you?
Well, as I said, it is a kind of learning how to understand their language and their profession. And I remember that I was talking to a producer, and he said, and that's why the Turtles and the Peacocks, he said, sometimes I have a topical expert or a health communication expert, and they want me to talk about some health subjects in my storylines, but they start a conversation by saying, well, actually, I don't like soaps very much myself, so I don't watch television, but would you be so kind and deal with this issue? And then, of course, this is a downer for the producer. So if you come in and say, well, I watch your series and I think it's a great job that you do, and it's really marvelous that you integrate so many themes, and what about maybe inserting something like a new actual problem as hearing loss? Would it fit with your ideas? So that's one way. And we also have a kind of different system in the Netherlands, that there is a possibility in the Netherlands to have a co-production agreement. So we can really create together from scratch on a new drama series, a new series. So I call this E&E co-production. Another way is to use an already existing format and to work like in Costa. It was a format that already existed, and to introduce some concepts in it. And then I call it in-script participation. And another way is, I would call it now E&E service. So you facilitate and you help the creative professionals to do their job, to give their research information, to give them shooting locations, like we heard of the Hollywood Health and Society Initiative and some other initiatives. So these three varieties are possible in the Netherlands, and that might be different with other cultures because we have a very strong public broadcasting system. So our public broadcasters know that they have to have 50% of their broadcasting time dedicated to education and information. So when we talk with each other, then I often say, well, if you have to meet this quota of 50% and you use entertainment education strategies and formats, then you can just book it as an educational quota, but it's fun, so you can compete with the commercials. So that's one way. And sometimes we, of course, also they need some extra funding for doing extra drama lines, and until recently it was possible even to collaborate on that level. And nowadays it's a little bit in a discussion because they say, okay, the public broadcasters are already paid by our taxes, so why should we invest them to create storylines on public values? But you know, sometimes it's good to have this little incentive so that they really start creating these lines.
You've been mentioning your collaborations with Endemol. Have you been involved in their organ donor and sperm donor formats as well?
You mean this famous one of the BNN, this organ donor show, or not?
Yes, that one, and there was some format, I Want Your Sperm, in which young women could pick out their sperm donors.
I was not involved in those lines, but I was involved in an organ donation line in Medical Center West. It was a hospital series, and we did research on that, and I wrote about the data also. Nowadays you see that there is a series was called Onderweg naar Morgen, Unterweg nach Morgen, or that was, and that had a lot of public themes, actual themes in it, because it was a public broadcasting. And now Gute Tijden, Slechte Tijden. Also they insert, and we work with the script writers. For example, they called us a few months ago and they said, we want, someone will die from a kidney problem, but can you help us to find out what type of kidney transplantation it is and what kind of bacteria there is. So we help them out and we refer them, and we also have, inspired by Hollywood Health and Society, and Marty talked about it, we have also kind of tips for scripts in the Netherlands. So we work with writers to create this tip for scripts, and of course at the day of the soap they are there, so they know us and they know we don't bite. That we are friendly, and that we really respect their jobs, and they respect our job because we have also a job. So let's say in these 20 years we gradually have teared down the wall, as the metaphor of Orwin, and the turtles and the peacocks really became a kind of feathered turtle or a slow peacock, whatever.
Yeah. Do you have questions for Martine? Yes, over there.
Thank you, Martine, for this marvelous presentation, also a very personal presentation. I'm working also in health education business in Germany, and in my experience, what I found is very difficult is that, I mean, dealing with this political side, which is normally giving money, or maybe also a non-governmental NGO side, but like Heart Foundation and so on and so on. I mean, these people, in my experience anyway, are sometimes very demanding. I'm saying, if we give money to this storyline, so we want a certain amount of content, of our contents in these storylines. And this is, I mean, a source of conflict. And what is your experience with this political side or with this expert side?
Yes. Well, I was working for the Netherlands Heart Foundation, so it's a good example. And, well, you know, when I was working there, producers came to the Heart Foundation with wonderful ideas of medical documentaries, and the Heart Foundation spent a lot of money on making documentaries on cardiovascular disease. And so a lot of producers came with their ideas, and then I thought, why wouldn't we have our own ideas? Because if we spend money on documentaries, it's only for people who are interested already in this topic. And my job was, and my passion was, to promote a healthy lifestyle, especially to bridge the health inequality gap, because a lot of people live shorter and have a lesser quality of life because, for several reasons, but one of the reasons is also because they are not used to elaborate so much information. They don't want to really study all kind of health information. They want to have it in an easy way, which fits with their lifestyle, which fit their way of communication. So that's the way I started to see how popular formats could be used for health communication. So when you have such an agreement with a producer, then it's really important to know when to come to the front and when to come to the back. So I noticed that you have to have a good briefing, in the sense that you have to spend some time together and say, okay, what would we like to tell the public? What is of public interest, and also what fits with the recent developments? And then the scriptwriter needs to have his own space to make his own drama and storyline. And in the beginning, I made a lot of mistakes myself, because there was my directors, and they wanted to know, okay, what are they doing, Martine? And what is a drama line? And can I see it? And what did you talk about? So I tried to make some reports, and I said, please, can you give me some of your ideas, because I need to talk with my directors. And I learned from that I should not do this. I should really talk with my director and say, okay, you have to back me up. You have to trust me. So I will be there in the briefing, and I will be there in the verification stage. We call it in creative communication theories. But in between, when there is this incubation, when they write a storyline, I don't want to interfere. So I learned a lot from that. And so that's why I like to share these experiences, so that others won't make the same mistake as I did in the beginning. And because that would really blur the nice relationship that you can have.
Okay, one last question from Richard.
Hi, Richard Holliman from the Open University. I was thinking of your presentation in the light of a couple of the presentations we had yesterday, particularly from Martin Kaplan, where he gave a nice example where the vaccine had been linked to autism, and they had a real concern about that. And at the end of the show, they put on a piece of factual information, find out more information from this site. And this kind of links to this idea of how do audiences know when authors writing drama are writing factual scientific information, and how do they know when it's fictional or wrong or incorrect? And that's a really tricky thing to get right, because we don't know how the audience is reading these things, yeah? So while we strive for accuracy, the audiences don't necessarily know when we are being accurate and when we're not. So I was wondering, to kind of counteract that, there's this notion of doing a docudrama where you actually interleave, you know, very obvious documentary bits with the drama thing. And I was wondering if you'd ever had any experience of doing that in the Netherlands.
Yes. Well, when you have this co-production and in-script participation relationship, we can go further than only say, here you have the information, do whatever you like. So we go beyond servicing. So, for example, and of course you don't have to be accurate in every detail. I mean, there are series when you see the doctor showing this, how do you call it, when X-ray on top down. So, and all the doctors say, wow, this top down, you cannot see this, but the public doesn't see it. But to answer your question, many of the series have their medical experts, and they are on the credits. And when we collaborate with them, it's also on the credits. So the people know that it was in collaboration with the Netherlands Heart Foundation or with the SCD's Foundation. And yes, and also the scriptwriters are conscious of their obligation, of their let's say, their responsibility to do it as correct as possible. And they want it. They really want to have the best. So if they make a mistake and you say, well, I mean, if you do it afterwards, then it's of course difficult. So that's why we like to be involved in the design criteria. So, and then they really are happy that you can help them with the right correction. And of course, you also can write some publications, or you have some interviews that also are read by the public, so they know that the scriptwriters have this good consultancy and that they use it. And but of course there also can be a mistake. And the organ donation, we had one problem, that the dramatist wanted to show the mother of the son who was dying and who had a new heart, gave his heart to another boy. They wanted to have this idea that the mother of the new boy knew who was the mother of the old boy, which is in practice not, but because of the emotions. And then we saw that the mother of the boy who died, she went to the bed of this young boy and she pretended that he was still her son. This was tricky, because normally you don't have this contact. So in this way it was dramatized. You felt the pain of the mother and the joy that he lived forever longer in this boy, but of course she was not allowed to see him. So there was a kind of tricky thing.
I think that's a really interesting example, because the one I was thinking of is, there's quite a famous one in the UK, which is about organ donation. What you have is turtles on screen every so often. You have a turtle on screen, the scientist,
yes,
and then you have the drama, and then the turtle comes back. So you actually interleave these things. So you have Robert Winston, very famous scientist in the UK, introduces the program, explain to the viewers what this program is going to be, explains what the docudrama is.
That's nice also.
And then at the end of it, there's this call to action to say, okay, we want you to sign up to the organ donation register.
Yeah, that's also a possibility, to have a public announcement or introduction. That's what we call it, prologue or epilogue. But in a drama format, it's maybe different.
Okay, I'm afraid we have to go on, but thank you so much for being here and sharing this with us, and good luck for your further work. Martine Bouman.